I've tried off and on a couple of times now to figure out a good way to package something in a video that would be informative but not laborious. So I'm going to give it a try today. So got a couple of things on my current project is, God, what happened to my door? My current project is replacing the door speakers in my truck, and there's a separate video that I made that shows the process of how I modified the factory mount to accommodate the aftermarket speaker, yada yada yada. So keep an eye out for that. There's like 2 or 3 videos that I'm going to shoot about car audio. This one that we're in the middle of right now is just more of an overview kind of thing. So with that said, when you're thinking about what you want to do with your stereo system, you really want to start with your head unit, or your stereo, if you want to call it that, or your radio. So in this, so you have some options. So this, if I can get it into view here, this is the unit, the factory unit that came with the vehicle. Pretty basic, pretty bare bones. The system included 4 speakers, 2 tweeters, and 2 rather basic speakers in the doors. The speakers in the doors are the ones that I replaced this weekend. You have some choices. The first is the size of the unit. This particular factory unit is what is called a 2-DIN or a double DIN. DIN is an industry standard that was developed in Germany for the dimensions of automotive audio systems. So this factory unit is a 2-DIN. It's 100 millimeters tall. They're all going to be the same width and the same depth. But 1-DIN versus 2-DIN, or single DIN versus double DIN, is going to be specific to the height of the unit. So this factory unit, this is a double DIN, which is 100 millimeters or 10 centimeters tall. And then the one that I installed right after I bought this truck, this is a single DIN. So this is 50 millimeters tall, or 5 centimeters. And what I did to fill a gap is I bought a aftermarket bracket. There's a company called Metra that makes all kinds of brackets, mounting brackets for car stereo systems, all makes and models, single DIN, double DIN. What they did with this bracket to make up the extra space that isn't being taken up by the radio is there's a little storage pocket down here. So you can put, back in the day this would have held a couple of CD cases or what have you. Now I just keep a pocket pack of tissues there or what have you. Metra also is very handy because they make wiring harnesses for aftermarket stereos. So what they do is, if you look here on the back of this factory unit, there are a couple of ports here. This port right here is for the antenna, but these 2 ports right here are for power and speakers and whatnot. So instead of cannibalizing the wiring in your vehicle, what Metra allows you to do is they manufacture a wiring harness. There's plugs that go in the back of here. You pull the plugs out, and then what Metra does is they make mating connectors that connect to your factory plugs, and then they map those wires out so that you know which wires to connect to the wiring harness for your aftermarket radio. So all you have to do is loom that together and make those connections, and then you plug the Metra harness into the connectors that came out of the back of your factory unit, and then on the other end of that is the connector that plugs into your radio. Makes it all nice and neat and tidy. So, the only thing that you have to be sure of is that your wiring in your car is right. 99.9% of the time it is. Turns out in this truck it wasn't. I won't go into the minutia of that. It just took me a while to figure out why I wasn't getting good sound out of my tweeters, and then I went ahead and replaced the tweeters anyway. So think about your head unit. Think about what you want out of the head unit. For me, the main thing was we have a hands-free ordinance here where I live, and the factory unit didn't have any kind of Bluetooth capability. So I wanted a head unit that would give me the Bluetooth capability. And then, as an added bonus, this one also has HD radio capability, which was I wasn't thinking about it, really caring about it that much at the time. I was more looking at other features and price point and things like that. But the HD radio thing was a happy accident because I actually found an HD channel broadcasting locally that does electronic dance music, which is my daily driver, and house music and things like that. So that's the station that I usually listen to when I'm commuting to and from work. This also does have, believe it or not, old school CD player. I didn't think it had one, and then maybe a month after I had it, I'm like, oh, what's this little lever here? Boink. And then, it also has USB and auxiliary jacks, so you can connect other stuff up if you want. But anyway, so moving on. So, once you get your head unit in, then you want to think about, your speakers. Does it sound good? If it doesn't sound good, one of the things you might want to check is make sure it's wired right. And I know I just said a minute ago that Metro makes a wiring harness that makes it all kind of idiot proof, and it is idiot proof unless the vehicle manufacturer does something silly. Okay, this is my Chilton's manual, and we're looking at the page, the wiring diagram for the stereo system. And one of the things I discovered when I was troubleshooting why everything sounded like crap was the fact that the factory wiring put all of the front channel audio into the tweeters and only the tweeters, and put the rear channel audio into the doors. And so once I rejiggered the connections there, that kind of fixed the problem, and you could actually hear good quality audio, particularly out of the tweeters. I wasn't getting good sound out of the tweeters just because it was basically forcing everything through them. So I wired it properly, and then I decided, you know what? These speakers are old, so I'm going to replace them. So then I got into replacing the tweeters. This is the factory tweeter. And then this is the back side. Here's the back side of my A-pillar. Here's the new one. The factory tweeter was mounted here on the A-pillar this way. And the replacement is mounted directly to the A-pillar material itself. And then this was really easy to take out and put in. I'm doing this pretty much one-handed to put it back together. There, just like that. Now all I have to do is bolt the chicken bar on right here, and it's all good to go. And then, like I mentioned earlier, I'm doing the finishing up the doors. I did the passenger side yesterday, so today I'm working on the door. And this is going to pass through there's a grill in the door panel, so I don't need to cover this up with anything. But if I was mounting it in a location that hadn't had a speaker before, they do have a factory grill that comes with it. Whoops, that would connect to that. So what you do with your speakers is really up to you. And do you like how it sounds, and what do you want it to sound like? And do you want more high-end notes, more high frequencies coming through? And if that's the case, you either want to add a tweeter, or perhaps replace the factory tweeters in your vehicle like I did. And then, from there you just build on it to taste. For me, I wanted, more multi-channel output. I wanted a system that was going to take advantage of the head unit, so I went ahead and mounted rear speakers. These are surface mounts because there's no room behind that panel there to hide anything, so I had to put those on the surface. And then I also went ahead and did a subwoofer because I wanted more better bass notes out of the audio system. So I guess I'm something of an audiophile. I mentioned before I like EDM, but I also like to listen to classical. And I also like to listen to classic R&B, and you know, so full range of sound. It's one of the things where the more the merrier. The more speakers you have, the less likely you are to get distortion, especially when you crank up the volume, because you have more speakers doing less work. So you're less likely to distort something. If you only are running two speakers or 4 speakers, and you go to crank it up, when you crank it up, you either, if they're not good quality speakers, you're going to blow them out at worst, or it's certainly going to distort the sound and it's not going to sound good. So, the more speakers you have, the less work it does. The work, the individual speakers are doing, the better everything sounds. So, there you go. Replacing factory speakers is pretty straightforward, particularly if you pay attention to the wiring diagram in your Chilton's manual. And if you're doing any kind of work on your vehicle and you don't have a Chilton's manual, you should get one, because it makes your life so much easier. And in particular, when it comes to electrical, all the electrical systems are diagrammed in the back of the book. So yeah, so there you go. So just some thoughts on stereo. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and throw those in the comment section. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see what other kind of craziness I come up with down the road, go ahead and subscribe, and then you'll get a notification when I post something new. And that's it. So thanks for hanging out and paying attention, and have a good week.